Okay, welcome back. There we go. Part 2. Right then, we're going to start with the cities of refuge. This is chapter 20 now. Yehovah said to Joshua, "Say to the people of Israel, appoint the cities of refuge of which I spoke to you through Moshe." We've got the list of them here in this picture, this map. These were the cities designated for all the people of Israel and for the strangers sojourning among them, that anyone who killed a person without intent could flee there, so that he might not die by the hand of the avenger of blood, till he stood before the congregation. And on to chapter 21. Then the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites came to Eleazar the priest and to Joshua the son of Nun and to the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the people of Israel. They said to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, Yehovah commanded through Moshe that we be given cities to dwell in, along with the pasture lands for all livestock. So by command of Yehovah, the people of Israel gave to the Levites the following cities and pasture lands out of their inheritance. And here we have a list. The Kohathites, the descendants of Aharon, you got Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin, 13 cities. The rest of the Kohathites, Dan and the half tribe of Manasseh, 10 cities. The Gershonites, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and from the half tribe of Manasseh in Bashan, 13 cities. The Merarites, Reuben, Gad, Zebulun, 12 cities. And then verse 8. These cities and their pasture lands the people of Israel gave by lot to the Levites, as Yehovah had commanded through Moshe. And then verses 9 to 40 gives you real detail about these cities. Verse 41 says, the cities of the Levites in the midst of the possession of the people of Israel were in all 48 cities with their pasture lands. These cities each had its pasture lands around it. So it was with all these cities, and you can see them all on the map there. Now, as we read earlier, Yehovah is true to his promises. It goes on and says, thus Yehovah gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give to their fathers. And they took possession of it and they settled there. And Yehovah gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their fathers. Not one of all their enemies had withstood them, for Yehovah had given all their enemies into their hands. Not one word of all the good promises that Yehovah had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass. So, all the land that Yehovah had promised was now in possession of Israel. None of their enemies could stand against them. The only failure was the failure of the people to drive out all the inhabitants of the land, which of course became a huge problem, just as Yehovah said it would. And this was a problem that had its roots in lack of faith, and it led to idolatry. Now, the eastern tribes return home. Chapter 22. At that time, Joshua summoned the Reubenites and the Gadites from the half tribe of Manasseh. He said to them, you've kept all that Moshe the servant of Yehovah commanded you and have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brothers these many days down to this day, but have been careful to keep the charge of Yehovah your God. And now Yehovah your God has given rest to your brothers as he promised them. Therefore turn and go to your tents in the land where your possession lies, which Moshe the servant of Yehovah gave you on the other side of the Jordan. Only be very careful to observe the commandment and the law that Moshe the servant of Yehovah commanded you, to love Yehovah your God, to walk in all his ways, to keep his commandments, and to cling to him, to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. So Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. So please note that all these things are connected. To love Yehovah is to walk in his ways, to cling to him is to cherish his commandments, to serve him with all your heart and all your soul is to be very careful to observe the commandment and the law. As was said to Joshua, be very careful to do according to all the law that Moshe my servant commanded you. Don't go the left or the right, that you'll have good success wherever you go. Now, to the one half of the tribe of Manasseh, Moshe had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half Joshua gave a possession beside their brothers in the land west of the Jordan. And when Joshua sent them away to their homes and blessed them, he said to them, go back to your tents with much wealth and with very much livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and with much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brothers. So the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh returned home. parting from the people of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, their own land of which they had possessed themselves by command of Yehovah through Moshe. And next, we see a misunderstanding that nearly leads to civil war. And when they came to the region of the Jordan that is in the land of Canaan, the people of Reuben and Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Jordan, an altar of imposing size. And the people of Israel heard it, said, "Behold, the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh have built the altar at the frontier of the land of Canaan, in the region about the Jordan, on the side that belongs to the people of Israel." And when the people of Israel heard of it, the whole assembly of the people of Israel gathered at Shiloh to make war against them. Okay, so this is quite a big business. Then the people of Israel sent to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and with him 10 chiefs, one from each of the tribal families of Israel, every one of them of the head of a family among the clans of Israel. And this is the same Pinchas who ran Zimri the Simeonite and Cosbi the Midianite princess through with a spear at the incident of Baal Peor. Right. They came to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the land of Gilead, and they said to them, "Thus says the whole congregation of Yehovah, what is this breach of faith that you have committed against the God of Israel in turning away this day from following Yehovah by building yourselves an altar this day in rebellion against Yehovah? Have we not had enough of the sin of Peor, from which even we have not yet cleansed ourselves, and from which there came a plague upon the congregation of Yehovah?" Those that died in the plague was 24,000. And of course, as we mentioned before, Pinchas was present at the conclusion to events there. "That you too must turn away this day from following Yehovah. And if you too rebel against Yehovah today, then tomorrow he will be angry with the whole congregation of Israel." Okay. "But now, if the land of your possession is unclean, pass over into the Lord's land, where Yehovah's tabernacle stands, and take for yourselves a possession among us. Only do not rebel against Yehovah or make us as rebels by building for yourselves an altar other than the altar of Yehovah our God." So you can see what is going on here. That over the other side of the land, they've built an altar. And the people are saying, look, if you rebel against the Lord, this affects all of us. It's not just affecting you. If the land's unclean, just travel over and come and dwell amongst us on the other side of the Jordan. And then they remember the incident with Achan. "Did not Achan the son of Zerah break faith in the matter of the devoted things, and wrath fell upon all the congregation of Israel? And he did not perish alone for his iniquity." So obviously the concern is the fact that this affects all of us. And they say, "Only do not rebel against Yehovah or make us as rebels." They recognize that the nation as a whole has a corporate responsibility. And they fear Yehovah. They fear what will happen. The people were vigilant, and we're also called to be vigilant. Hebrews 3, "Take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened." And it's that word again, hazak, through the deceitfulness of sin. That's not how you want your heart to be hardened. So, exhort one another daily. And here we see an unbelieving heart is a hard heart. Exhort one another daily. "My brothers, if anyone among you wanders from the truth and someone brings him back, let him know that whoever brings back a sinner from his wandering will save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins." Joshua 22:19 actually gives us an interesting expression that you might use when exhorting a brother or a sister. It's, "Do not rebel against Yehovah or make us as rebels." As we saw before we went away to Sukkot, and we looked at Achan and all that had gone on, there is this element of corporate responsibility that we have. And of course, when they went over to the Jordan and they spoke to these people, they reminded them this. They said, "Did not Achan the son of Zerah break faith in the matter of the devoted things, and wrath fell upon all the congregation of Israel? He did not perish alone for his iniquity." For those who might find themselves being rebuked, how are you supposed to respond to it? Like, oh, who do you think you're talking to? Well, the psalmist says, let a righteous man strike me. It is a kindness. Let him rebuke me. It is oil for my head. Let my head not refuse it. Then the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh said in answer to the heads of the families of Israel, the mighty one God, Yehovah, the mighty one God, Yehovah, he knows, and let Israel itself know. If it was in rebellion or in breach of faith against Yehovah, do not spare us today. For building an altar to turn away from following Yehovah, or if we did so to offer burnt offerings or grain offerings or peace offerings on it, may Yehovah himself take vengeance. So if we did this in rebellion against Yehovah, fine. Attack us. In fact, let Yehovah take vengeance on us. But no, we did it from fear that in time to come your children might say to our children, what have you to do with Yehovah, the God of Israel? For Yehovah has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you people of Reuben and people of Gad. You have no portion in Yehovah, so your children might make our children cease to worship Yehovah. And I can kind of see where they're coming from in a sense, because we live where we are for people online. We're in Birkenhead, we're on the Wirral, and there's a river, isn't there, the River Mersey, that separates us from Liverpool, and it's only like a small bit of water, and we're all in Merseyside, as it were, but there definitely is, because of this gap in this water, there does seem to be like a very definite difference between Liverpool and Birkenhead. And people in Liverpool, not really that keen on people in Birkenhead. I've met some who aren't anyway. But it always gets me. There's only this small bit of water, and yet there seems to be this big difference, which is a bit odd to me. But here again, these people are concerned. There's this divide of water. We don't want to be cut off from being seen as being part of Israel. So they explain that's why they've built this altar. Therefore we said, let us now build an altar, not for burnt offering, nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you and between our generations after us, that we do perform the service of Yehovah in his presence with our burnt offerings and sacrifices and peace offerings. So your children will not say to our children in time to come, you have no portion in Yehovah. So they weren't actually acting in rebellion, were they? And we thought, if this should be said to us to our descendants in time to come, we should say, behold, the copy of the altar of Yehovah, which our fathers made, not for burnt offerings, nor for sacrifice, but to be a witness between us and you. Far be it from us that we should rebel against Yehovah and turn away this day from following Yehovah by building an altar for burnt offering and grain offering or sacrifice other than the altar of Yehovah our God that stands before his tabernacle. And of course, in time to come, the northern kingdom, the house of Israel, would end up setting up altars all over the place, which were not where they should have been, in complete rebellion. When Pinchas the priest and the chiefs of the congregation, the heads of the families of Israel who were with him, heard the words that the people of Reuben, the people of Gad and the people of Manasseh spoke, it was good in their eyes. And I think this is important as well. They didn't just rush over there. They didn't just say, right, what? Let's go and kill them all. Let's go over. They went and they actually inquired about it. And they spoke to them. And it's similar to the way that we're to deal with people, not just to rush in and try and bludgeon people. But when it talks about exhorting one another, we're to go to each other. And the reason that we're going is not to destroy people, but to encourage people, to put them back on the path, to straighten things out. And Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the priest, said to the people of Reuben and the people of Gad and the people of Manasseh, today we know that Yehovah is in our midst, because you have not committed this breach of faith against Yehovah. So, because they now know that there's no rebellion going on, they're like, wow, phew, Yehovah is still with us, because they recognize the corporate element of being Israel. Now you have delivered the people of Israel from the hand of Yehovah. So Yehovah is with us. You haven't rebelled against him. Then Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the priest, and the chiefs returned from the people of Reuben and the people of Gad in the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan, to the people of Israel, and brought back word to them. And the report was good in the eyes of the people of Israel, and the people of Israel blessed God and spoke no more of making war against them to destroy the land. The people of Reuben and the people of Gad were settled. The people of Reuben and the people of Gad called the altar witness, for they said, it is a witness between us that Yehovah is God. Now, chapter 23. A long time afterward, when Yehovah had given rest to Israel from all his surrounding enemies, and Joshua was old and well advanced in years, Joshua summoned all Israel, its elders and its heads, its judges and officers, and said to them, I am now old and well advanced in years. And you have seen all that Yehovah your God has done to all these nations for your sake, for it is Yehovah your God who has fought for you. Behold, I have allotted to you as an inheritance for your tribes those nations that remain, along with all the nations that I have already cut off from the Jordan to the great sea in the west. Yehovah your God will push them back before you and drive them out of your sight. And you shall possess their land just as Yehovah your God promised you. So, this is a call to faith. First, recognition. It is Yehovah your God who has fought for you. He has been with you in all this. Second, encouragement. Yehovah your God will push them back before you. Just before his death, Joshua warned the people that they should cling to Yehovah and not become like those around them. That they should hold fast to Yehovah in love in keeping his commandments. Because that was his big concern, and you'll see that as it goes on. Don't become like the people around you. Be strong to keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside from it neither to the right hand nor to the left. So the words that were spoken to him, he repeats to the people. And he says, do all of it. This isn't about, oh, we like this bit, this is good. All of it. Don't go either to the right or to the left. That you may not mix with these nations remaining among you, and the names of their gods shall not be named among you, neither shall you serve them or bow down to them. You to be separate, set apart. You are to be holy. Okay? Don't go wandering off after the gods of the peoples around you, however that might look. You shall cling to Yehovah your God, just as you have done to this day. An interesting word there, the back. We see in Deuteronomy 13, shall walk after Yehovah your God and fear him and keep his commandments and obey his voice, and you shall serve him and cling or cleave to him. So to cling to Yehovah is to fear him, to shema, to cherish his commandments, to shema his voice. And he says, cling to him. Don't be influenced by all that's going on around you. Do all that is written in the word. Don't go a little bit either right or left. And in Deuteronomy 4:4, after the incident where we mentioned before of Baal Peor, where Pinchas came with his spear, after that, when Moshe talks about it again, he says, you who held fast, who cleaved to Yehovah your God are all alive today. 24,000 died in a plague, but all you who cleave to him are still alive today. Yehovah has driven out before you great and strong nations, and as for you, no man has been able to stand before you to this day. Just think of all that Yehovah has done for you. And it's a call to us too. One man of you puts to flight 1,000, since it is Yehovah your God who fights for you, just as he promised you. You can always rely on Yehovah. He declares that he has been their strength, that their security is found in him. Be very careful, therefore, to love Yehovah your God. Interested in it? Be very careful. It is those who love him who can declare, as David did, I love you, O Yehovah, my strength. Yehovah is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. Be very careful, therefore, to love Yehovah your God. But if you turn back and cling to the remnants of these nations remaining among you and make marriages with them so that you associate with them and they with you, again, the call is to love Yehovah, is a call to be separate, to be set apart, to be holy. Those who want to know the security and peace of Yehovah, what's their rock, their fortress, must be set apart. Know for certain that if you do these things, you go after them, start mixing with them and start, taking on their traits and all these things, Yehovah your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. They shall be as a snare and a trap for you, a whip on your sides and thorns in your eyes until you perish from off this good ground that Yehovah your God has given you. When we fail to love Yehovah, there are troubles. And the people are warned. Words that we have heard Joshua declaring in Joshua 23 are like an echo of something Yehovah speaks to Moshe in Numbers 33. Yehovah spoke to Moshe in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you and destroy all their figured stones, destroy all their metal images and demolish all their high places. Do not entertain these worshippers of false gods, is what he's saying. He's saying, have nothing to do with their religious practices. Drive out all the inhabitants. You're not to go there to start to be like these people. As Joshua put it, be strong to keep and do all that is written in the book of the Lord of Moshe, turning aside neither to the left or to the right, that you may not mix with these nations remaining among you, and the names of their gods shall not be named among you, neither shall you serve them or bow down to them. Or as we read in Deuteronomy, but thus shall you deal with them, you shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and chop down their asherim and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a people holy to Yehovah your God. Yehovah your God has chosen you to be a people for his treasured possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. And I think it's quite sad. The Lord's basically saying, don't be adopting all their practices. Don't do that. You're to be completely separate. And what have people done throughout the centuries? People have adopted all these practices of the people around them, all these pagan things. We know, for example, in Christianity, we've got Christmas and we've got Easter. We've got all these things that are not scriptural, have been adopted. And the people are no longer concerned with being holy and being set apart to Yehovah. Please note, to be Yehovah's, to belong to him, is to be holy. He says, you should be holy to me, for I am Yehovah, I'm holy, and have separated you from the peoples, set you apart from them, that you should be mine. Back to Numbers 33, and you shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given you the land to possess it. You shall inherit the land by lot according to your clans. To a large tribe you shall give a large inheritance. To a small tribe you shall give a small inheritance. Wherever the lot falls for anyone, that shall be his. According to the tribes of your fathers you shall inherit. And the warning, which obviously the people did not heed. If you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those of them whom you let remain shall be as barbs in your eyes, thorns in your sides, and they shall trouble you in the land where you dwell. We've just read in Joshua that it is actually Yehovah who drives out the inhabitants of the land. And that if the people want to have Yehovah fight for them, then they need to cling to him, which is what? To fear him, to cherish his commandments, and to shema his voice. And to do what? To walk in all of his ways. And if they don't cling to him and drive out the inhabitants, the Lord says, and I will do to you as I thought to do to them. They have been warned. To cling to Yehovah involves driving out all the inhabitants of the land. They needed to be thoroughly dealt with. There was no room for half measures. These inhabitants were a danger to Yehovah's people. As we have noted, the call was for the land to be holy to Yehovah and for the people to be holy to Yehovah. Just as we're to be his, to belong to him, that he can call us his, we're to be holy. We're to cling to Yehovah. To cling to Yehovah involves driving out all that would linger on in our lives and seek to defile us and cause us to wander off to the right or to the left. Or all that might come in that we might adopt from other ways of thinking and who God is and how he reacts and how he deals with people and all these things. We're not to have anything to do with any of that whatsoever. We are to follow Yehovah wholly. There is no room for half measures. We're to root out all that would be a snare to us. And that includes all the hangovers from Christianity. This idea that, oh, he's done it all we don't really have to do anything. We just want easy land. We don't want to have to deal with any challenges or any trials in our lives. We don't want it to be difficult to follow Yeshua. We are to hold fast to the word. And just as those in our parsha were not allowed to allow the inhabitants of the land to remain, you cannot allow sin to persist in your heart. The psalmist said, as we read earlier, if I had approved iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. You are to cling to Yehovah. And it's in clinging to Yehovah that we have our security. As we've seen, it is to cherish his commandments and shema his voice, which is, as we've also seen, what it is to love him. To cling to Yehovah is to love him. And in Psalm 91 it says, because he holds fast to me in love, because he clings to me, I will deliver him, I will protect him because he knows my name. He knows who I am. He hasn't mistaken me for somebody else. And for those who do hold fast to Yehovah in love, he says, when he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. I just think of all the people who are going to cry out, and the Lord is not going to listen, because they have not held fast to him in love. They decided that it's okay to mix with the nations around them and to adopt these practices, and they've held on to iniquity in their hearts. But if Yehovah's people do not cling to him, if they do not hold fast to him in love, they instead mix with those around them and lose their set apartness, then it will not go well for them. They will not be able to call on Yehovah. And of course, we know that we're not supposed to be like the people of the world. Ephesians 4 says, this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their minds. What's he saying? He's saying, don't be like those people in the world. Paul is always calling us to be set apart from the world. In Romans 12, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Which speaks of being spiritually clean, which has got a lot to do with having a clean heart, which, please note, has also got a lot to do with having a clean mind. You can't walk in the filth of the world and be spiritually clean. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you might prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Being set apart equals being the people who cherish the word. It is those who delight to do Yehovah's will, those who cherish his Torah, that can call upon Yehovah. And if we go back to Ephesians 4, start again with verse 17. This I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to their hardness of heart. We saw what hardness of heart was equated to before. It was an unbelieving heart. They've become callous and have given themselves up to sensuality, greedy to practice every kind of impurity. You must no longer walk as the Gentiles do. You're not to mix with them. You're not to become like them or adopt their practices. It's the same message Joshua gave just before his death. You must not walk as the Gentiles do, rather keep and do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses. And we find the same message throughout Scripture. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance. But as he who called you is holy, you also must be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. That is not the way you learn Christ, assuming that you have heard about him and were taught in him as the truth is in Yeshua. To put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. To be renewed in the spirit of your minds. As we've just read in Romans 12, it's a call to be spiritually clean. Put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. So the call to holiness connected again to cherishing the word. Putting on true righteousness. So put off your old self. Put on the new self, which talks of total surrender, talks of humbling yourself before Yehovah and coming in true repentance. As Yeshua would say, pick up your cross and follow me. The call is for us as his people to be completely and utterly submitted to him, to walk in his ways, and to be completely different than the people in the world. And the thing that makes us stand out is when we walk in his ways. If anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. Everybody should be aware that you're different, that you are not like the rest of the people in the world. So ask yourself, will you follow him even if it is tough to do so? He said, greater love is no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. Yeshua, the one who says, will you come follow me? And he says, you are my friends if you do what I command you. And back to Joshua 23. And now I'm about to go the way of all the earth, and you know in your hearts and souls, all of you, that not one word has failed of all the good things that Yehovah your God has promised concerning you. All have come to pass for you, and not one of them has failed. But just as all the good things that Yehovah your God promised concerning you have been fulfilled for you, so Yehovah will bring upon you all the evil things until he has destroyed you from off this good land that Yehovah your God has given you. If you transgress the covenant of Yehovah your God, which he commanded you, and you go and serve other gods and bow down to them, then the anger of Yehovah will be kindled against you, and you shall perish quickly from off the good land that he has given to you. So if you fail to love Yehovah, to cling to him, to drive out all the inhabitants and to be holy, then the anger of Yehovah will be kindled against you. So, as Yehovah's people, we are to be holy. To be holy, we need to deal with all that would cause us to go astray. As we read earlier, those of them whom you let remain will be as barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides. Now, I just want us to read Joshua's address once more, this little bit, because these words are incredibly pertinent to us if we want to be amongst those who are victorious. Because I'm aware that when we go through Torah portions, there's bits where people might switch off and they might just go, oh yeah, okay. And it just waffles over your head. But I'm also aware that I've never met anybody yet who would not like to be able to have the assurance that when they cry out to Yehovah that he will hear them. Not met anyone yet who didn't want to be able to say with confidence that they are part of his holy nation, and didn't want to say with great confidence that they will walk into the promises of Yehovah. Therefore, be very strong to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, turning aside from it neither to the left nor to the right. I want that bit to sink in for people straight away. All of the word, not some of it. And I know that there's people who watch online who do not keep all of the book of the law of Moshe. And they do turn aside to the right and they do turn aside to the left. I want you to take a moment and think about what that actually means for you. I want people to think about the call to holiness. I want them to really appreciate how important it is to Yehovah. You may not mix with these nations remaining among you, and the names of their gods shall not be named among you, neither shall you serve them or bow down to them. None of the nonsense. You shall cling to Yehovah your God just as you have done this day. And what does that mean? Fearing him, obeying his commandments, shemaing his voice, walking in all of his word. For Yehovah has driven out before you great and strong nations, and as for you, no man has been able to stand before you to this day. One man have you put to flight 1,000, since it is Yehovah your God who fights for you just as he promised you. He declares that he's been their strength, that there is security in him, and that is something that is true for us. Be very careful, therefore, to love Yehovah your God. This is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Be very careful to love Yehovah your God. Ask yourself, are you very careful to love Yehovah? If you turn back and cling to the remnants of these nations remaining among you and make marriages with them so that you associate with them and they with you, the call to love Yehovah is a call to be separate, set apart, not like the people around you. Know for certain that Yehovah your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. He will not be with you. They shall be a snare and a trap for you, a whip in your sides and thorns in your eyes. It will go terrible until you perish from off this good land that Yehovah your God has given you. If you are not very careful to love Yehovah your God, it will not go well. And now I am about to go the way of all the earth, and you know in your hearts and souls, all of you, that not one word has failed of all the good things that Yehovah your God promised concerning you. All have come to pass for you, and not one of them has failed. And each one of us in our hearts and souls knows that Yehovah has never failed us. Never. And each of us should also know that in all that we face or will face, in all that might challenge us, Yehovah will not fail us. Not ever. We should also be assured in Yehovah's promises that we are so assured rather in Yehovah's promises that we are able to rejoice when we look ahead. Just as all the good things that Yehovah your God has promised concerning you have been fulfilled for you, so Yehovah will bring upon you all the evil things until he has destroyed you from off this good land that Yehovah your God has given you. If you transgress the covenant of Yehovah your God, which he commanded you, and you go and serve other gods and bow down to them, then the anger of Yehovah will be kindled against you, and you shall perish quickly from off the good land that he has given to you. The promises will be taken from you. As Moshe put it, when you go out to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots, all these scary things, and an army larger than your own, you shall not be afraid of them, for Yehovah your God is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So, again, we come to this question of, are there any chariots of iron in your life? Are you refusing to drive out the inhabitants? Are you refusing to remain set apart and holy? Would you rather mix just for an easy life? This is the way you want things. While all the while the Lord says you shall not be afraid of them, for Yehovah your God is with you. I'll just say to everybody, for all those people who are not walking in his ways, it will not go well for you. Rather be resolved to follow Yehovah with all your heart. And when you draw near to the battle, the priest shall come forward and speak to the people, and he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are drawing near for battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint. Do not fear or be in panic or in dread of them. For Yehovah your God, it is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory. And in the cities of these peoples that Yehovah your God has given you for an inheritance, you shall save alive nothing that breathes. Again, no half measures. Shall devote them to complete destruction, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as Yehovah your God has commanded. That they may not teach you to do according to all their abominable practices that they have done for their gods, and so you sin against Yehovah your God. The reason for these people being put under the ban is their wickedness, and of course this call to be separate and to not be influenced. And in talking of their wickedness, Genesis 15, Yehovah said to Abraham, Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they should come out with great possessions, obviously talking about Egypt. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, you shall be buried in a good old age. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Yehovah is righteous in all his judgments, and these people were to be banished off the land for their wickedness. Now, it's clear from reading the book of Judges that the nations were indeed a snare and a trap for you, a whip on your sides and thorns in your eyes, which tells us that the people turned back and were not set apart. They were not very careful, therefore, to love Yehovah their God. They learned the abominable practices that the nations did for their gods, and they sinned against Yehovah. And Yehovah did not drive them out because they did not cling to him. So what happens when to us when we do not cling to Yehovah? When we allow sin to linger because it might be difficult to deal with, when we are not very careful to love Yehovah, will we walk in victory? Will we take hold of the promises of Yehovah? Just think about the situation in the Parsha. The people all know that Yehovah has not failed them. He's given them victory every time they've been strong and resolved to deal with their enemies. He's assured them, encouraged them, and fought for them. And yet, after the death of Joshua, Judges 2, the angel of Yehovah went up from Gilgal to Bochim and said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. What is this that you've done? Just like so many people, isn't it? What did he say to do? Oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then they just don't. So now I say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their God shall be as a snare to you. As soon as the angel of Yehovah spoke these words to all the people of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and wept. They called the name of that place Bochim, and they sacrificed there to Yehovah. And when Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went, each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. So the anger of Yehovah was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them, and he sold them into the hand of their surrounding enemies so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. And whenever they marched out, the hand of Yehovah was against them for harm, as Yehovah had warned, and as Yehovah had sworn to them. And they were in terrible distress. So what a complete change. From having Yehovah with you to give you victory in all things because you've remained set apart to him, to this, to being in terrible distress. Why? Because Yehovah is actually now against you. They did not resolve to be set apart. They did not shema. It is madness to do what you think is right in your own eyes and to try to live a victorious life when you've abandoned Yehovah and done what is evil in his sight. And that is what so many people do. Throughout the book of Judges, you see how futile it is to struggle on when you're chasing after nonsense and you allow sin to linger. And Yehovah raised up judges who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned aside from the way in which their fathers had walked and who had obeyed the commandments of Yehovah, and they did not do so. Whenever Yehovah raised up judges for them, Yehovah was with the judge, and he saved them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For Yehovah was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who afflicted and oppressed them. So Yehovah raises people up to encourage his people to turn back to him and away from other gods. Yehovah has always raised people up for this purpose. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. So the anger of Yehovah was kindled against Israel, and he said, because this people have transgressed my covenant that I commanded their fathers, and have not shemad my voice, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations that Joshua left when he died, in order to test Israel by them whether they will take care to walk in the way of Yehovah as their fathers did or not. So Yehovah left those nations, not driving them out quickly, and he did not give them into the hand of Joshua. He wanted these people to be tested to see whether or not they would take care to walk in the way of Yehovah. What happens to you when you're tested? What happens to us when we do not cling to Yehovah? When we allow sin to linger because it might be difficult to deal with? When we are not very careful to love Yehovah, will we walk in victory? When we do not heed the call to be set apart, will we take hold of the promises of Yehovah? Do we forget all that he has done for us? Do we forget that he has never failed us? 1 Corinthians 16, be watchful, stand firm in the faith. Whatever the test, whatever the situation, act like men, be courageous, be strong, be resolved in your convictions. fully determined not to waver. Of course, the inhabitants of the land were allowed to persist, and the consequences should serve as a warning to us. Do not allow sin to persist in your hearts. Deal with it right now, and heed the call to be set apart. Joshua, how long will you put off going in to take possession of the land which Jehovah, the God of your fathers, has given you? How long will you permit sin in your heart and in your life? For all those who are not following Jehovah wholly, who are not trusting him, who are deterred by the chariots of iron, for all those who allow sin to linger, I would say, do not rebel against Jehovah or make us as rebels. On Thessalonians, we urge you, brothers, admonish the idle, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with them all. See that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good one to another and to everyone. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. Do not quench the spirit, do not despise prophecies, test them, hold fast what is good, abstain from every form of evil. Encourage the faint-hearted and help the weak. We're to be bold, and we're to help one another, to meet challenges head on and to vanquish all that would seek to linger on in Israel and lead us away from serving Jehovah with all our heart and soul. If you know people who are faint-hearted or are weak, encourage them. Remind them of the assurances of Jehovah. Let us consider how to stir one another up to love and to good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you say the day drawing near. And Paul said as well, abstain from every form of evil. Root out all that which inhabits that which is to be set apart to Jehovah. And 2 Peter 2 we read, the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. And since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. But according to his promise, we are waiting for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Therefore, beloved, since you are waiting for these, be diligent to be found by him without spot or blemish and at peace. What sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness? And yet so many people, they're not set apart, and they are very worldly, and they are influenced by all the things around them. But it is living by his word that we are sanctified and made holy. Sanctify them in your truth. Your word is truth. So, coming to a close in part 2. We're to be holy. We must rid ourselves of all that would linger on in our lives and seek to defile us and cause us to wander from serving Jehovah with all our hearts. We're not to shy away from dealing with the things in our lives that seem big and scary. Whatever it might be, whether it's an addiction, whether it's, a difficulty with a boss or something over regards to keeping a Sabbath or something. Don't shy away. Be resolved in your heart to be strong. We're to root out all that would be a snare to us, and we're to hold fast to the word. The word declares his name. Those that know him and know his name can trust him. And if we know him and we trust him, we can go forward with great confidence. But to be like Caleb, no matter how formidable the enemy may seem, we root him out, we meet the challenge head on, we trust Jehovah for the victory, and we endeavor to be holy. Caleb did not shy away. He took hold of the promises of Jehovah, and his faith told him that if Jehovah was with him, then he would be victorious. He followed Jehovah wholly. Will you? Yeshua says, pick up your cross and follow me. We'll be back at 4:30.